Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Cadet First Class Kobe Thompson. It is my privilege to welcome you to the 30th Annual National Character and Leadership Symposium, and specifically the Falcon Foundation Bud Breckner Keynote Lecture. Please join me in recognizing the Falcon Foundation for their generous support of this session, featuring a cadet-moderated discussion with the Medal of Honor recipient and Dr. Kevin Basic. We would like to sincerely thank the National Medal of Honor Institute for its partnership with NCLS and helping support the recipients' attendance here today. If you're not familiar with the museum and institute, we highly encourage you all to go to mohmuseum.org to learn more about this amazing project. It is now my pleasure to introduce our panelists and our cadet moderator. Please hold your applause until they are all on stage. Master Chief Petty Officer Britt Slabinski, originally from Northampton, Massachusetts. Master Chief Britt Slabinski is a retired Navy SEAL with 25 years of service. During that time, he completed 15 combat deployments. Master Chief Slabinski earned the Medal of Honor for his actions during the Battle of Takur Ghar, Afghanistan on March 4, 2002. On that day, his team was initially taken by helicopter to the top of a 10,000-foot snow-covered mountain. The helicopter was greeted by an enemy barrage of rocket-propelled grenades and small arms fire. This caused the helicopter to lurch forward. One of the Master Chief's teammates was immediately tossed out of the helicopter, and the helicopter then crash-landed into the valley below. Master Chief Slabinski rallied his team, called for support, and they climbed back up the mountain to rescue their stranded teammate. During the climb, the team came under heavy fire from 3 different directions. Without regard for their own lives, Master Chief Slabinski and a teammate charged directly toward the first enemy position, and together they eliminated the bunker. Enemy machine guns from a second hardened bunker only 20 meters away then began firing on the Master Chief's position. He repeatedly exposed himself to enemy gunfire to engage the bunker and direct his remaining team's fire toward the bunker. With his team taking casualties, Master Chief Slabinski maneuvered his team to a more defensible position, directed airstrikes dangerously close to their own position, and requested reinforcements. At dawn, very accurate enemy mortar fire forced the team to scale down a sheer mountainside. Master Chief Slabinski then carried a severely injured teammate over open terrain in deep snow while calling in fire support against the enemy who were engaging them from ridges above. Over the next 14 hours, Master Chief Slabinski stabilized casualties and continued directing the fight until the hill was secured and they could be evacuated. Master Chief Slabinski retired in 2014 and currently serves as President and CEO of Leadright Enterprises. I would also like to introduce Dr. Kevin Basic. Dr. Basic is a 93 graduate of USAFA and a 24-year veteran of the U.S. Air Force. He is a respected and highly recognized expert in the area of leadership and development. In addition to being one of the original architects of the conceptual framework for leadership of character, now guiding the efforts of CCLD and USAFA, he also served at the Pentagon, advising the Air Force Chief of Staff and Secretary of Defense on issues of value-based leadership, impacting over 3.2 million service members. Dr. Basic is currently the Chief of Leadership Programs at the National Medal of Honor Institute. It's now time for the moderated portion of the event. Cadet First Class Molina, over to you.
Thanks. All right, first off, gentlemen, thanks so much for being here. Thanks for speaking to the class of 2023 and the class of 2025. And as well as all the other esteemed guests. So first, we all want to know a lot about Master Chief Slabinski, but before we get there, we want to hear about the journey of Britt Slabinski, where you came from, and what made you the person you are today.
Yeah, certainly, Alex. Hey, could I pull the crowd real quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Hey, so I'm participation based here, so I'd like to ask all of you a question real quick. I'm ducking because I gotta be able to see you. This is a Star Wars question. You ready? Okay, so show of hands, who's on the light side of the Force? Show of hands, light side. Who's a Jedi? Okay, hands down. Okay, logical. What's the next question? Who's the dark side? Dark side. Yeah, okay, I just want to get a tone for who I'm talking to right now.
I'm the smooth side. Is there
The
a
smooth side. There is a gray area. Everyone, it's a privilege to be in your presence here over the past couple of days. What a great event this has been, Alex. So, a little bit about me. I'd say I graduated high school in 1988, as MC said, from Northampton, Massachusetts. I made Eagle Scout. Got any Eagle Scouts in the crowd here? Yep. Made Eagle Scout at the age of 14. Anybody beat that? Yeah? I'm sorry, there's nothing else going on in my town, so. Made Eagle Scout at 14. Graduated high school in 88. Was going to go to the University of Massachusetts, and then I decided, hey, I really wanted to do something else. It really wasn't going to work for me. Interesting piece that led kind of that decision not to go to school. I went down to the Navy recruiter and volunteered. Said, hey, I want to go into the SEAL teams. And given that 80% of people don't make it in the SEAL teams, and it's the Navy's essentially number 2 recruiting tool right now, he was very eager for me to come on in. But part of what led to that decision, and this might resonate with some of you there, my home life wasn't all that great. And that kind of led to my decision to say, look, I didn't want to stay in home anymore, and it was ready for me to go do something else. So I thought the SEAL teams would be, a pretty interesting challenge, and it certainly was. So I get in the SEAL teams, go through BUDS with Class 164 in Coronado, California, and I don't know how many of you have ever been in the water in Coronado, California, but I thought, hey, it's California, that stuff's going to be super warm. No, it sure wasn't. And then graduated that in January of 1990. And then went to, all the other SEAL training stuff, and then went to SEAL Team 4 in Virginia Beach, Virginia. Yep, got a few Virginia Beach folks in there. And we did that for a couple years, a couple deployments down to Central and South America, which was just fabulous. And then screened to go to Naval Special Warfare Development Group, and then did the majority of my career there. That's me. Reader's Digest version.
I appreciate that. That's fantastic. So you served the majority or all of your career in the global war on terror.
Yeah.
As we know, the global war of terror is quickly coming to a close, and we're transitioning to the war of great power. This is going to be the next fight for the new lieutenants in the Air Force, Space Force, Army, Navy, and Coast Guard. Mm-hmm. So where do you see the state of the total force moving towards as we transition from one period of war to the other?
Yeah, so when the global war on terror started, certainly, in late 2001, 2002, the military, it was a force in transition at that point. September 10th, we were a peacetime force, and all its training and dare I say, bureaucracy that goes with that piece. And then we're at war the very next day. And so the rules were one way on September 10th, and now they're another way on September 11th. And the faster that mechanism, all of the Department of Defense and the other agencies learn those new rules, the faster we will win in those engagements. Now that engagement, of course, was not state on state, right? That was, we were fighting in an idea then. And an idea, which we quickly learned, cannot be defeated kinetically. That idea has to be defeated with another stronger, better, well-educated idea. And that idea, unfortunately, in Afghanistan, it didn't really work out so well for us. But hopefully during that time, we were just planting seeds with them, and eventually over time, that seed will grow and they'll decide to be able to stand on their own. It's quite different for the next engagement that we have coming up. Throughout those 20 years, a large portion of our forces really weren't engaged. Well, maybe this next fight, hopefully that we don't get into, that they will be engaged. And what I want to impress upon everyone here is that what you are doing here at this institution and your other institutions like yours, it's a 4-year job interview. 4-year job interview to go into our armed forces to be a warfighter. Now, you're getting a great education here, no doubt about that. But you're going into the Department of Defense. Its primary mission is to protect the homeland, protect her ideals, and above all, make it right wherever you go. There's a reason why our crest has, the American crest, the eagle has arrows and an olive branch in there, right? We have great kinetic power and we have great humanitarian power. It's going to be your job to wield that. But going against that great power that's out there, and we all know what those are that are facing it, it's going to be a challenge for all of us to learn those new rules quickly. History can be a little bit of a learning tool for us. This happened certainly in World War I. It certainly happened in World War II, didn't it? And we have a lot of history majors in here, I'm assuming? Yeah? Study back in history. We've been in these transition points before, right? An example would be United States Navy off of Salvo Island going up against the Imperial Japanese Navy. Didn't really end up so well for us because we were still learning the new rules of the game. So there'll be new rules to be learned. There'll be new techniques to be learned. It's going to be your responsibility to figure all that out.
So I'd like to go back. I'm here to be curious along with Alex. Let's go back a bit to the early stage of your career.
Yes.
So coming out of that sort of pre-war position before September 11th, you're preparing to be a SEAL. You're in the SEALs, you're doing your training. I've heard you say a classic Navy motto, which is you don't rise to the occasion as much as you sink to the level of your training. What insights did you have from like your first deployment when rounds are going, both directions now and things are getting real? What was the insight for you as a new warfighter?
Yeah, the insight for me was, well, I mean, you were not ready for this. Like this is, I mean, of course, the game completely changed instantly, and it's, wow, a lot of the things we learned in that peacetime environment, they didn't really work here.
Really?
It's not right. I mean, this isn't working. So on the spot, you got to come up with a different plan, a different way of thinking, literally. And for me, that was a huge awakening moment to say, okay, what worked in peacetime isn't really going to work here. And it didn't. And thankfully, us as a team, we all learned very quickly the new rules, as we do, right? Because we have people like you in the ranks that are out there and figuring it all out. But coming back off that fight, quickly learned that I needed to challenge everything that I had previously learned.
And were you in a leadership role at that time? I mean,
was.
you going, holy cow, I've got a team. I got to regroup and reorient.
Yeah, I was in a leadership role. I was a senior enlisted of a troop of SEALs, which is about 20, 25 SEALs. But I had to relook all of that stuff. I realized very quickly in that moment that my training, I wasn't, and more importantly in my thought processes, and I wasn't a true professional then. I wasn't a professional. I wasn't 100% committed to the task. I was really, to be brutally honest here, I felt like at that point, looking back on it, I was just going through the motions up until that point.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're told, particularly like in the Special Forces units, it's like, well, you're special, right? You're better than everybody else.
Right.
You're the best that's out there. And
Buckle up.
boy, all of that's just ego and envy and esprit de corps, which does you no good when the firefight starts.
Good to know.
So that all gets questions, right? Your very reality and your existence gets questions. And then from that point, right, that's your bottom, lowest point of no return point, then you're going to start coming back up. So that's what I learned in those moments.
Cool.
And we see that, that sort of decision-making process and what you talk about in your story, the Battle of Takur Ghar. And I think something that would relate to most of us is something that maybe you didn't necessarily train for, and that's risk calculus. You know, what's going through your head? What's that risk calculus between, you know, completing the mission set and protecting the integrity and the well-being of my team?
Right.
Because it's something that we're all going to have to go through as young officers very soon.
Well, certainly we did have risk calculus then. We did talk through things, and you know, we have a tendency to talk a lot about the things that went wrong, right? And hindsight being what it is, you know, that thing right there, that finger of blame, boy, that's pretty easy to use in those moments. So we did have some risk calculus, but there were things that went really right and things that didn't go so well. But in those moments, you know, as you heard in the opening piece, you know, that Neil fell out of the aircraft. Now, it's the tallest mountain peak in the region. I did not want to go there, not a leap of imagination that says, if it's important to me, it's going to be important to somebody else, right? So I said, look, I don't want to go there. I will get your intent done another way, just not the way you are directing me to go do it. But sometimes to be a good leader, you got to be a good follower. So I said, yeah, roger that. I'm going to go take my team up there, but here's what's probably going to happen. And boy, sometimes it sucks to be right. And sure, yeah, the rockets came in and bullets the size of your finger passing through the aircraft. And last thing I see was Neil coming out. Air crew did a marvelous job saving our lives and got us off the attack zone. But we crash landed in the valley below. And I went through some triage decision making there to basically take that air crew, get them to a safe spot, and got my second helicopter of the evening. And this is where your risk analysis question is coming in.
So just to paint a picture, it's still pitch black. Because you came in the middle of the night.
Yep.
Weather conditions, I mean, it's snow-covered mountaintop, right?
Yep.
Just got blown out of the sky, lost a teammate. All hell sort of breaking loose. You're now down at the bottom of valley.
Yeah, in enemy territory.
All right.
Yep. Second helicopter comes in, takes us all up, and we take everyone back to the safe area where we had just left some 90 minutes earlier. So that's one problem, right? So I had two problems there. I had the downed air crew and I had my teammate down. Can't take care of both of them at the same time, a little triage. The problem's right in front of me. The big task for me, as I was thinking of that, is I cannot make this situation in front of me worse. I have this downed air crew and everyone's looking at me and I cannot make it worse, so I had to make that right first and we go back to the safe area. And then I can focus my attention on Neil and figuring out his situation. And I get a little piece of information over the radio, and you got to think of this. This is all part of that transition piece. The radio nets were all clogged, everyone talking on the radio. Everyone wants to find out what's going on, what happened, what can be done about it. And I'm listening to this on my headset, and I can't get radio information out, I can't communicate out, and I can't communicate back in. I mean, there's things that I need. I need my own situational awareness stuff, and I can't communicate. So at this point, I'm feeling absolutely alone. But I hear a little piece of information come over the radio that says he's alive. He's got a infrared strobe light blinking on his helmet, and there's got about 4 people around him. So to me, I took that as my proof of life. Now, if I can bring all of you back into a Wayback Machine and into that night of March 3rd, 2002, it's about, I'd say 3 o'clock in the morning. Keep in mind, I told you I'm sitting in my second MH-47 of the night. This one will soon be shot down, although I don't know it yet. And wearing uniform just like you're wearing here right now. And imagine if we turn the temperature down in here to just about 30 degrees, 28 degrees, and we throw some snow throwing through the cabin and a bunch of JP8 jet fuel exhaust flowing through here. And then in your seat, you feel those rivets of that aircraft just vibrating through your pants into the very bones of your existence. This is my moment. And I can tell you, at that moment of deciding, do I make an immediate attempt to go back? Or do I wait for a sure thing, which was a quick reaction force of 40 Army Rangers with enough ammunition and will and drive to overtake a country. Do I wait for them? But the thing is, I have this piece of information that says he's alive.
And what's the gap of time? If you do wait for that quick reaction force, what's that gap look like?
Yeah, it would have been about 3 hours.
Okay.
It would have been about 3 hours before they arrived. We put a plan together and we could have got up on top. So surely the difference between the two of them would have been, one's a rescue and the other one's a recovery. Right? And I think we can all determine the differences between those things. If we go now, we were outfitted for a reconnaissance mission. I wasn't outfitted for an assault mission, so we don't have the right equipment that we need. And we're in short supply of just about everything that we need to get this thing done. And that weight, the weight that all of you will probably feel soon here, and many of you who are on active duty, you felt it before. It's that weight of responsibility, that weight of command. This is a point where it's hitting me pretty hard, right? This is when I'm starting to make that turn from where I was as, let's just say, an amateur or junior varsity into a varsity player. As I started to think through, okay, look, all of us, everyone that's in this room and everyone you're going to meet, everyone that's going to work for you, we all form a covenant with each other. And you probably don't know this yet, but I'm telling you that you're doing it now. You have a covenant to those above you and below you and to your left and your right, and that covenant is, hey, we're going to go make it right and take care of each other. No matter how bad it gets, we're going to go and accomplish that mission. And in those moments, it's easy to say, hey, I'm not going to leave my teammate up there and incur more risk, but it's still, like, we make promises. How many people in here have ever made a promise and broke them? Right? And does that still haunt you to this day? Yeah, of course it does. So I made a promise to Neil, and as I'm thinking through this problem, and I've got a green writing the right notepad here, and I'm thinking through everything. How much fuel do I have? How far away, and my close air support assets, and all the logistical pieces of this. But there's this emotional piece to it that I still have combat power. I can still make a difference with what's in front of me. And then here comes this Eagle Scout thing. Remember, I told you I made Eagle Scout. And can anybody in here recite the opening lines of the Boy Scout oath? Of course, no, that's the law.
On my honor,
There you go. Yeah, on my honor, I'll do my best to do my duty. So that I'm in that picture there, that aircraft vibrating into me, and that echoes in the back of my head. That's a little tool that you learn when you're a kid, that you don't know when it's going to come back and serve you. Much like the ethos that you're learning here now. Those things are tools for you to lean on when you need them. And I didn't know it, but I started listening to it, and that's when I made the decision, hey, I'm going to go back and I'm going to keep my promise and going to go do the best I can to get Neil. And so I turned around, I told the team, hey, this is what we're doing, and I gave them everything that I knew. Everything. I gave them all the information that I had in case there's a possibility I'm the first one killed off the ramp. They have a chance of survival. And then once that's done, the ramp came up, and we lifted off to go on our 5-minute flight. What's interesting to note is that you're not alone in these situations. And remember, I told you I was on my second helicopter the night. That helicopter and that aircrew didn't know particularly where that HLZ was, so there's a missing ingredient. I needed a guide to get us there, and that guide came from the first helicopter that got shot down, which the air mission commander volunteered to leave the safety of that camp, get in that aircraft, and fly right back to the same exact spot. Right? He knew he was going to fly right in the face of a Russian, essentially 50 caliber machine gun, which was a 12.7 millimeter in there. So he knew the danger that I was getting into. So the point I'm making here, when I was making this decision, I'm not making it just for me, making it for all of us involved, and everybody was committed to it. People that didn't even know Neil's name or know my name. Going back to that covenant that we enter into should not be underestimated. And then we flew back, started flying back. I said the ramp climate came up, and I had a little moment of, I guess, humanity, where my thoughts drifted back to home, just for a minute. I had a 6-year-old boy at the time. And I just thought, as I was looking out the back of the helicopter, seeing the exhaust, the green goggles, seeing the exhaust trails, I remember just staring out the back for a minute, thinking, hey, I'm sorry for what's to come. Meaning what's to come is the casualty assistance calls officers coming to my home later on that day, telling them that your father's gone. But you see, that's kind of a luxury that us in leadership positions, you're not going to have, right? You can have that for a minute, and then you need to compartmentalize that and stay focused on your task at hand, because those thoughts, they're going to rob you of some valuable intellectual bandwidth that you're going to need for the fight coming ahead. So I literally parked it ahead, and we went on with the fight. Yeah.
That's incredible. I want to hear more about that human moment that you had. You're talking about ingesting all this information, all this logistics, and all this risk calculus in order to benefit your team, to ensure the safety of the crew and all the other operators on board. You were thinking like an operator. But when you had that human moment, you almost think that you're certainly looking death in the face. How often and how compartmentalized does that human moment have to be in order for you to perform?
Well, let's just face it, this is a human job that we do, right? Everything you interact with, we have great technology and some of it's pretty incredible, right? But anywhere you run into, there's a human factor in all of that stuff. So you can't completely park that away and just be a robot. Right? There's a human factor in all of it. Remember, we have great kinetic capability, but it also means you have to be a human to know when to stop using that kinetic capability, right? Because whatever kinetic capability you're using it on another human, right? Let's not forget that for a minute. And there's going to come a point in time when you, in a leadership role, got to say, "I'll stop," right? So you can't, nor should you completely put that away, right, and become nothing but a machine. So you still have to be a human and think that way to lead people, to do things that are very difficult. I also want to mention that, hey, I'm very proud of everyone on the team because I couldn't have gotten back up there without their trust. And let's talk about trust is so critical in those leadership situations when things are starting to fall apart. Yeah. Couldn't have done it without their trust. I couldn't have done it without the trust of the air crew. They trusted us, I trusted them. And therefore we went and we executed and did something pretty difficult together.
This was on the front end of your career. I mean, you had 14 deployments after this.
This was deployment number one.
Number one. So welcome to the show. And then you've got 15 deployments, and you have not been nominated for the Medal of Honor. You're just a warrior who does warrior things, and you get back in with your team to keep fighting. There's a philosophy. The NCLS obviously is about leadership and how you bring the code and the covenant and values to leadership. I've heard you mention the importance of sort of a stoic philosophy to guide how you approach the tough moments of leadership or life. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like?
Yeah. Got anybody that's stoic in here? Follow that practice? Yeah. So, like I said, part of your task is constantly question. Like your primary weapon, you should be figuring it out right now. Your primary weapon is that gray matter, right? There's times when your gray matter can lie to you. And you constantly have to question how you're thinking. What processes are you going through to come up with those decisions? And that's what I did in 2003, getting back off that. I was like, well, I was not thinking appropriately there. And if we're going to keep moving forward with this profession, we've got to figure this out. So I kind of dabbled with the Stoic stuff, but this is when I really just completely jumped into it. And what it gave me was a sense of calm in those difficult situations when everything's falling apart, everything's going crazy, literally things blowing up or maybe casualties at your feet, to be able to think through the things that needed to be done in the right order. Because in those difficult times, like all your teammates and all those in your charge, they're all looking at you. And sometimes your leaders are looking at you, and there's a lot of pressure on you. And to hopefully come up with the right decision. And you will make bad decisions. And part of Stoic philosophy is to help you sort through that too. There's things in your control, of course.
Right. There you
There's
go.
things not in your control, of course. Here's something I can do about. This I can't do anything about right now. Maybe in the future I can, but right now I can't do anything about it. So it was always a task for me to constantly think about how I'm thinking. Am I right? Mm-hmm. And then, because all that responsibility, all those lives, all those dreams of people hinging on my decisions, your decisions, rely on that. So Stoic philosophy became a cornerstone.
Yeah, and there's a character thread in there too, is who you're trying to be while you do what you do.
Right.
And control what you can control.
Yeah. It's still about being human, right?
Right.
Some people get wrong about Stoicism, it's like, oh, you don't care. Well, no, that's not actually factual, right? It's like, I care about coming to the right conclusions, thinking through this thing. Yeah.
So you talk about Stoicism in how you act in your decision-making processes, but you were a team lead long after that morning in 2002. Mm-hmm. So you've had lots of experience with this. How do you keep a team together, a team in the fight, a team focused on the mission at hand, as the smoke is around you, as bullets are flying, as absolute chaos ensues?
I tell you, it's a challenge. It's not just in combat, but it's on the sporting field, right? When things are up against you and it seems like the all is lost moment, it's always going to be a challenge. And it doesn't have to just be the battlefield. It could be whatever problem you get, or your project isn't going the way it is and everyone's ready to quit the project. Like how are you going to keep the motivation going? We are, again, I keep going to repeat this human theme. We are human after all. You know, we make decisions with two processes, an emotional process and a logic process, and you know, there's pieces and parts to both of them that you absolutely need. Too much emotion, are you going to make a good decision? Yeah, maybe not. Road rage ever work out well for anybody? So that's your job, is to kind of balance those two things. For me, what worked for me, all I can do is just tell you stories, is that what worked for me in those bad situations, I can tell you, after the fight on Roberts Ridge, a few days later, we got called out on a daytime mission, helicopter vehicle interdiction, so it's daytime, and back then we were never supposed to fly in the daytime because the risk was too high to the aircraft. But we had to do it because the target warranted the risk. So I remember coming out of my tent, and the story that I'm going to tell you is after what I received is the best leadership I received. So I come out of my tent and I see my squadron. They're all getting ready to go load up the aircraft, and they normally were a very gregarious group, except they're all very quiet. So I noticed there's something different in the emotions of the group as a whole. All very quiet, all looking down, all messing with their gear, getting it ready, and I was like, oh, this is not good. Something's different here about them. So I went up to each of them, took my combat glove off, and went up to each one of them, looked them in the eye, and just shook their hand. And essentially what I was doing then, I was taking this huge problem that was sitting on everyone's shoulders, and I brought it down to a much more local piece for just a moment. Reaffirming those connections, that covenant with each of us, saying, hey, we're going to get this done. It's going to be okay. We'll get it. We'll go make it right. And I didn't come up with that. I had learned that a couple of days before. When I got off the mountain, a really good friend of mine who was our operations officer at the time, I got off the mountain and I still had all my combat gear on. I had literally the blood of my teammates on my legs, bullet holes all through my gear, bruised feeling absolutely terrible. Like I'm done. Like, get me out of here, done. Of course, that's not a possibility because you're in a combat zone. Bad things are going to happen. Doesn't relieve you of your responsibilities that you have committed to. You cannot quit. So my friend, Tim, we'll call him, is in the very back of the Joint Operations Center, sees me standing in front of everyone just like this. They're all looking at me. Feel about that big. He gets up in the very back. He's a pretty big guy. Walks right up to me, and my initial thought was pretty bad. I was like, great, how's this gonna go? Except he comes right up to me, best leadership I've ever experienced in my life. He comes up to me, not a word said, gives me this big hug. Anyone in here had a hug that lasts just a little bit too long? Just a little bit, and you're like, and you squirm a little bit, and you're like, oh, this ain't cool, right? Well, this was one of those, except he held it. And then it dawned on me, I'm not a smart person, but it dawned on me what he's doing to me. And this is the one, like, he's a black belt and jiu-jitsu guy, so I was like cartilage popping hug, right? And then I let it, the humanity set in, and I let it happen for a minute, right? Did you ever, like, you get a big hug from your parents or a loved one or someone you trust, and you just let it hold it for a minute? All these type A's looking at me, I don't care. And all he's doing, he does it, and he lets me go, not a word said, just looks me in the eye, goes back to his seat, and gets back in his own fight. And that set me straight, right away, bam, just threw my switch back in on position. And that's what I was doing when I walked out and shook everyone's hand, is saying, hey, right, this is tough. Yeah, it could hurt, but we're gonna do this together, and we'll get through it together, and we'll go do the right things, and then we'll come home. Wow. So that was my leadership experience of how to get through those difficult times.
I love the covenant thing. I've got a dear friend, Arthur Schwartz, who says, anytime we make a commitment, and think about this, no matter what the commitment is, and you know, the 3 degrees, you're getting ready for commitment ceremony, but anytime you make a commitment, you sacrifice freedom, right? This ring, put this on, I can no longer pursue other people. You take this ring that you get when you walk across the stage here, and you commit to this, there's certain things that you can no longer complain about, right? It's part of the deal. You're in or you're out, and you're in. So I love the fact that the hug symbolized, we're in this together, we got this.
Yeah, I remain close to him to this day. That's what I'm talking about, just embracing your role. This is who you are, right? This is who I'm going to be. Might be a little uncomfortable moment for some of you, but make the decision earlier and you'll be a better human and warfighter for it. Yeah.
Now, these people got to know you, obviously, and then a nomination comes down for the Medal of Honor.
Yeah.
Okay, so if we can explore that a little bit, I've heard Kyle Carpenter, some of you got to hear Corporal Kyle Carpenter, and he has a great phrase that maybe you use as well, but that it's a beautiful burden. What was it like for you to be now sort of identified as somebody deserving this when you're part of a team and a community and a covenant? How'd that land for you, and what was that journey like?
Oh, very uncomfortable. It's still an uncomfortable place to be. It's funny, you know, the first heard about it, retired in 14. In 2016, I got called back to our command. Some friends of mine were receiving some high-level awards. So, and the Secretary of the Navy was going to be there, and the Secretary of the Navy wanted me to be there. I was like, oh, hey, that's great. The glad he's thinking about me. And so I get to the command, and you know, it's much like this, and you know, all that activity's happening on the stage, but I'm in the back where all my teammates and my buddies I haven't seen in a couple of years, getting all caught up, and who cares about that guy on the stage? And I literally think I got my back to him. He walks up on stage, and first words he says, where I just want everyone to know I just authorized the Medal of Honor for Command Master Chief Britt Slabinski. And I'm like, what? And first I heard about it. So it is really a very uncomfortable place to be. And my initial reaction was no. General Mattis, Secretary Mattis at the time, called up and I said, hey, sir, don't do this. right? It's just so uncomfortable. And based off, you didn't hear the whole story, but I mean, based off what everyone gave that day, I mean, 7 Americans lost their lives, 7 severely wounded. Just to single me out just wasn't right. And of course, in good, I'll still call him General Mattis style, he told me, hey, understand, Master Chief, shut up and follow orders. I was like, yep, okay, sir. And I began, it's a relationship you got to have with it, or else you're just not going to be able to bear it. You have to end up having a relationship with it. And the way that I looked at it and learned from the other recipients was, and it's so absolutely true, is, although our name's on the back of it, it's just not our medal. It's the nation's medal. It's the military's medal. It's everyone's medal. That everyone else's DNA is in this. Everyone that trained me, I think when I went through BUD/S, some of their DNA is in there. All my instructors, maybe even some family members were in there. It isn't maybe like my Boy Scout master's DNA in the thing in there somewhere. Everyone that served that day on the mountain, on the ground, isn't their DNA inside there a little bit? And now don't I have a responsibility to tell everyone's story, to get across to everyone that you come across, right? To say, Kyle's got this thing that says that you're worth it, and I absolutely love his pitch about that. But it belongs to just so many other people. All right, and then when I'm gone, it'll reside probably in our museum, right? As one, right. My main one does.
Exactly.
And you just have to come to grips with it. That it brings out, sometimes it brings out the best in people, and it really is a medal. Yeah, there's some kinetic action attached to it, but it really is about love.
Yeah,
is what it comes up being. The family you are entering into. I mean, all of you now are forming relationships that are going to last you forever, right? And there's love tied to it. Maybe you don't even know it yet. And you're going to form more deeper relationships with people that you don't even know yet. They're out there, out there, and they're waiting on you. The greatest relationships of your lives are waiting on you, and it is all about love. And to me, that's what it really represents.
Gentlemen in First Class Molino, thank you for your time and giving us the opportunity to think critically about leadership, teamwork, honesty, and much more. At this time, I would like to open up the floor for questions. Attendees can ask questions at the microphones posted in the audience.
No Star Wars questions?
As the Travis firefighter talked last night, you shared with me a little bit about some of your struggles. I thought maybe it'd be good for you to share with the class those people that came alongside you when you had some of those struggles carrying the medal.
Travis, it's great to be in your company, my friend. Go Navy.
Can you repeat the question for him?
It's good esprit de corps right there. I love all of you. I'm sure you know that.
Wrong crowd, sir.
No, it's the right crowd. It's the right crowd.
So can you repeat that question?
Okay, so the question is, I shared some stuff with Travis last night that, I've had some struggles, right? Probably some of you could relate to. They kind of, some of the troubles really, some of them started after Roberts Ridge. We lost a couple of helicopters with a lot of good friends. We lost a lot of them with this extortion helicopter shoot down where we lost an entire troop of special operators and all the air crew. And after that moment, that stoicism for me, it cracked. And I started a spiral going down. And I retired in 2014, and I did a really good job putting up a facade to all my teammates, my friends. And you hold up the facade and it's like, okay, Superman's in town, right? But it's like a movie set, and then you turn around and you look behind that thing and it's nothing but burned out sticks, and it's barely holding up, right? That house of cards that's holding up that facade. And it took me a little while to really come to grips with it. Remember I told you earlier is that gray matter up there, it's pretty smart and pretty cunning. And it will lie to you. And if you start to believe in it, You start to believe what it's telling you, that you can't do this. You're not fast enough. You're not smart enough. This is the worst day of your life. Nobody cares for you. You don't have any friends. You're going to start to believe it. Right? You're going to become exactly what you start to think about. And sometimes you can't get out of that cycle, and you need someone else. You need your friends and the people that love and care for you to show you, hey, sun's shining outside today. There might be some clouds in the way, but it's out. And yeah, so sometimes you can't do it alone. And you will have struggles, and there will be dark days. But you got to know that there's a really strong chance that what you're thinking about is not reality, right? And the way out of that sometimes is your friends and your teammates and your loved ones, and asking for the help to say, hey, I got a problem right now and I need another opinion. And thankfully I found that. I found another opinion with someone that loved me unconditionally and dragged me out of a very dark place. And that is my wife right now. She literally, where is she? She's here. She's listening to me somewhere. There she is right there. That's Christina. I call her Dr. Awesome. And I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her.
That takes courage to ask for help.
Yeah.
And for a command master chief, Superman,
Yeah.
that's tough, but what a signal it sends to everybody else who's struggling and thinks they're wrong because of it.
Yeah.
Because it looks like you're pulling it off. So for you to have the courage to reach out and ask for help, I think that's leadership too. So
To be fair, I didn't ask for help, right? I was in a Starbucks on my 5th double espresso of the day, ran into her, and her terms of endearment were, "You look like shit." Yep. Yep. Fact.
good question.
First, thank you, sir, for speaking with us today. Earlier this morning, I attended Dr. Glad's lecture, and I asked him a question about humanizing the enemy. And it was actually recommended to me after to get your perspective about it. And throughout your discussion with us today, you often emphasize the human nature of both your team and the enemy. And I would like to hear you expand upon that, about acknowledging the humanity of the enemy and how that approaches and how that actually works in the nature of warfighting. Because Dr. Glad emphasized the value gap between yourself and your group and the other, placing one kind of life over another. But the nature of war is that you're putting other lives above others.
Yeah, what a terrible situation to be in, isn't it? Absolutely terrible. And I got to tell you, I hope what's brewing on the horizon never happens. I absolutely hope it never happens. I hope you are never put in those situations. But look, at the end of the day, this is the profession we've signed up for. That's why the American crest, the eagle, looks at the olive branch and not the arrows. That's why it's important for you to know when to stop. You cannot forget emotions. Emotions can run the day in combat, right? It can and will. That's why it's your role to be able to detach a little bit from that stuff and realize that opponent, in many ways, is just like you. Let's use China, for instance, right now. Right now, somewhere in China, there's a group just like you going through their service academies. Is there not? Yes. Do they have mom and dads? Yeah. Do they have dreams, hopes? Do they celebrate birthdays? Yeah. Just like you, right? And through one thing or another, politically, we just disagreed, right? And a conflict emerges. And when it becomes that moment, as regrettable as it is, that eagle must look to the arrows. But it's up to you to determine when those times stop. It's up to you to get the fight over as fast as you possibly can, right? Get it over quick. The faster you get it over with, the less people that are going to die and the more dreams that can maintain and go on. Terrible, terrible spot to be in, but this is your profession.
Well done.
Thank you, sir.
Well done.
We have time for one more question.
Good morning, sir. I'd like to echo Cadet Gwynn's sentiment to thank you for speaking with us today. Cadet 3rd Class Bryn Cronover, you talked about the uncomfortableness that you felt in being nominated for and receiving the Medal of Honor and how that landed with yourself. However, I'm curious how that landed with others. In what ways did your relationships with superiors, followers, friends, and families change when you received the Medal of Honor?
Yeah, so, I mean, interestingly enough, the original recommendation for the award upgrade didn't come from the SEAL community. It came from an independent board that was, I guess, authored by Secretary Ash Carter many years before to look at all awards, Silver Star and above, to figure out why were there so few Medals of Honor awarded. So in a way, it kind of came as a surprise to everyone. I think they looked at some 800 plus Valor Awards and only one made the selection. I think it came with a lot of it's about time from my teammates. Certainly after, I mean, it takes eyewitnesses for the award, so all my teammates had to have been involved in it, in the investigation to go with it, to move it forward. And it's still what I have found with the medal, right, is it's easier for me to engage with my friends and teammates when I'm not wearing it. And I think maybe some of you have experienced it when you see us standing around out there. It almost becomes a barrier. Have any of you experienced that? Like, hey, I don't want to go up to that person. I don't want to go talk to him, right? It's an uncomfortable place to be. And I know that. I know that it becomes a barrier, right? And it's a barrier from, doesn't matter whether you're a flag rank, all the way down to junior, or you're in a secretary level, there's some barrier there that prevents communication, a critical layer of communication that needs to happen. And it's always, I feel like it's always on me to break through that barrier and to foster that deep, meaningful communication. Hopefully I've done that with enough of you here. I know Kyle's done that, Will has done that, Flo has really tried to get across to you to say, don't let this be a barrier to our friendship and our communication. As far as friendship goes, when the award came and the day came at the White House, it was vitally important for me to have as many Gold Star families there, as many of my teammates there as possibly could come. And most of them were there, that were there supporting me that day. And if you ever watch the ceremony, whether it's on YouTube or wherever it's out, you'll see me on stage there at the White House. I'm actively scanning the crowd and locking on certain people, and those are my teammates and the Gold Stars, where I'm just communicating with them to say, hey, we're here together. This really is it was just so uncomfortable, and I needed their reassurance to say, hey, we did our absolute best for the right reasons that day. And I was very, very proud that they were there sharing that moment with me.
Thank you, sir.
Master Chief Slabinski and Dr. Basic and Cadet First Class Milano, thank you for your time today. Your experiences and perspectives speak to how we can reimagine leadership and inspire teamwork. On behalf of the United States Air Force Academy and our National Character and Leadership Symposium, please accept this token of our gratitude. The base of this gift is made from marble from our terrazzo. This is significant to us because all cadets have had to run the marble strips during their freshman year. We hope you will look on this and remember your NCLS experience fondly.
Thanks, man. Great job.
This concludes our session. We'd appreciate audience feedback on your NCLS experience via the posted QR code on the event app. Cadets, please check in for this session using the posted QR code. Thank you and have a great afternoon.